Lines level shortcuts in Visual Studio coming up next. This is Daniel and you are going to get coded. As you may know, I have the code on the right side, on the left side I have the shortcuts, and we'll go one by one. I explain them and we apply them, okay? Let's get started with the first one. Actually, I have a pair, so add below and add above. How to add a new line above and below. So enter and control and enter. So let's try to go to line number 36. And if I press enter, you can see that I have a new line. If I press control, enter this time, I add a new line above. So let's try to go to line number 43. If I say enter, it goes one down. Control enter, up. You see? So this is how it works. You can add below or above, below or above. Select above and select below. So another pair to select above, everything that is above, everything that is below. So let's try to undo all of these new lines and let's try to see. So Control Shift and Home. Control Shift Home to select all the lines that are above. So every single line that is above the cursor and the cursor was here are selected, okay? Let's try to put our cursor again here and let's try right now all the lines below the cursor. So Control Shift End, everything below. So above, below, above, below. Okay, so Control Shift Home, Control Shift End. Also we have one here, go to brace, and this is go to matching brace. So for example, if I go here, okay, I want to go to the end of this specific method. How can I go there? Well, you can press Control and the right square bracket, okay? So let's try to go here and we can say Control and right square bracket. And you can press again to go to the first one. So first, second, first, second. So this is how you can move up and down, you know, in the body of, or in the scope of a specific part of your code. Let's try to do the same for each. So on line 36, I have the beginning curly brace and I can do Control right square bracket and this happens again. Also this works for parentheses, so something like that. For any type of brace, curly braces, parentheses, square brackets, anything. The next pair is to indent and to outdent your code. Very important. So why do we need these? For example, you want to actually paste the code and you copy the code from somewhere. And this code looks kind of like this and it's not indented, you know? It's not well formatted. You can say tab, so tab to actually move it. So you move all the lines to the right side and then shift tab to move them back. So tab to move to the right and shift tab to move to the left, okay? So right and left, right and left. The next pair is going, well, it's not a pair, is one alone, but with two things. So Control M to collapse and to expand. And again, because we are at lines level, we are operating on multiple lines. So how can we close a scope? So let's try to move this one back. And let's try to say I want to close the scope of this object initializer. So here I have an object initializer for laptops. I want to close the scope. We can say Control and M. So Control M to close the scope. And right now you can see that we have ... meaning the scope is closed. And also you can see here as a tooltip or a message, I don't know, a dialogue, you can see everything that is inside this one. And we can press again Control M to actually open this up. So Control M to open and close. This is very useful because sometimes a class or a file is very long and you have something, for example, let's try to see. I want to work, for example, after the do while and I want to see the for each as well. And I cannot do that. Also, you can use this one over here. This splits the file. This is the same file. So this button over here right now is not visible anymore because I have used it. But this splits the file in two. It's the same file. And as I type here, you can see that it is here as well. So it's very useful when you want to actually operate on the same file but on separate chunks of the file, so separate parts. And this happens when a file is too long. But if you don't want to do something like this, you can just close the do while, so Control M, and right now you can write something before, something after, and you can look before the current scope of the do while. So I can look at the for each and I can write my code after the do while. So very useful. The last pair over here is to cut selected and delete selected. This is not that useful in some scenarios, but in others they are very useful. So Control L actually cuts the selected. So if I press Control L here, still cuts as Control X. So this behaves in the same way. But you can see that if I press Control V, I paste what I cut it. Okay, so not cut it, but cut. The past for cut is cut. So what I cut here, I put it on line 34. But imagine this. If you want to copy, for example, this line over here. So I want to copy only this part from this line. And I want to remove this space over here. If I just say Control X, I lost what I copied. And if I say Control V, I'll paste the space. But if you do Control Shift and L, you can remove the space and still have everything copied in the clipboard. Okay, so let's see that in action. I'll put again some spaces here. And let's try to copy this one. So I copy this part over here and I go over here, okay? I say Control Shift L to remove those lines, and then afterwards Control V, you are still able to paste what you've copied. So the difference between this and the Control line and the Control X is the fact that you override what you copied. So these actually cut the line or cut the selection. But when you press Control Shift and L, you delete the selection, okay? So useful pair if you want to do something like this. The subgroup for this file, for this lines level is the refactoring, and this is very important. So let's see, at the first glance, they are kind of similar. So they all start with Control R, Control, and then M-I-V-E-R, okay? So miver, I don't know. So M for extract method, so method, I for extract interface, V for parameters, don't ask, encapsulate field, E for encapsulate, and rename for rename. The most useful is the last one, so Control R to rename things. So these are shortcuts for refactoring. And let's try to talk about refactoring for a moment. When you write code, you don't write it well the first time. That doesn't happen. Doesn't happen with me either. So I don't write the best code the first time. This doesn't happen. And refactoring comes into play after you write some code. For example, you want to rename a variable which you named wrongly, or you think that it needs to have another name, or you want to extract a method. Maybe you have written a method which is too long and you want to extract that, and you want to use Visual Studio to actually do some things. So let's try to undo everything. So right now everything is undone, and we save it, and let's try one by one. Extract method. So if I scroll down a little bit, you can see that I have a do while loop over here, and this do while is inside the main method. And this main method is way too long. This is not going to end up in production code. It's way too long. So it makes sense to remove or to extract the do while loop from this specific method. And we can do this manually. We can say Control X and we can declare a method, and we can do all of that and try to solve the errors. But we use Visual Studio and we need to be smarter than that. So Control R, Control M. Right now, what happened? We have a pop-up window here, but everything worked. Right now, you can see that I have a new method. So let's try to name it, I don't know, iteration. I don't know what I'm doing here, so just give it a name, iteration, and I say enter. What happened is Visual Studio declared a method, private static void iteration, and it knows to actually pass the parameter that I need. So here I pass the laptop's argument as a parameter, and here I receive it as laptops. And why is like that? Why does this happen? Visual Studio knows that the code from here is dependent upon the laptop's variable, so the laptop's dictionary. So if we double click on laptops, you can see that we have two usages of the laptop variable over here. So it knows, Visual Studio knows to pass this as an argument. If we were doing this by ourselves, we might forget to actually pass the laptops and we would get some errors. You can see the errors over here. We have, well, actually the error in the iteration. Let's try to remove the laptops parameter as well. So you can see inside the iteration, inside the method, we have two errors. Laptops doesn't exist in this specific one. What you might do is to actually declare it as an instance field over here, because the class program is a class, and it makes sense sometimes to make variables, to create variables as instance fields. But I don't want this time. So this is like the power of Visual Studio. It generates code for you, and you don't have to write it by yourself. So I don't have to actually solve all these errors, okay? The next one, extract interface. So I can go to the laptop class over here. So the laptop class has 3 properties and 1 overridden method. Let's try to press Ctrl R, Ctrl I and see what we get. So we get another window. It prompts us to name the interface. In C#, all the sorry about that. In C# all the interfaces start with I. So you have for laptop, I laptop. For report, I report. So you need to prepend the letter I before the name of the interface or the name of the class. We can leave that as it is because I want iLaptop. We can press Tab. This will create it in a new file. I want that in a new file. And then we can choose which members we want to add to the interface. So we can press space to actually check and uncheck these things. So let's try to say I want model and price only. And I hope you see this, okay? So I want model and price only. So if I press Tab, I want to continue on. Okay, so down arrow, I want only these, space, and then Tab. Select all, no, okay, so only model and price. Hit OK. Right now I have an interface, iLaptop, with only these 2 properties, so model and price. Also, if you have noticed or not, you have here the public keyword, so the access modifier, if you want to know the terminology. This public makes the property available outside of the class. In the interface, you see that we don't have public or private. By default, all the members in the interface are public. There is no such thing as a private member inside an interface. The purpose of an interface is to provide a list of members which has to be implemented. So the list has to be implemented by a class. So if this laptop implements the interface, this laptop has to implement all the members. So if I remove model, you can see that I have an error because iLaptop interface is not defined, okay? But again, it's not the purpose of this. Control R, Control I, extract the interface. You don't have to do this manually. Control R, Control V to remove parameters. Okay, let's try to just undo. So we need the model property, and let's try to go to a method to remove parameters. This method doesn't have parameters. Let's try to go to program, and I think program has because we just removed them. So Control Z, Control Z. Let's try to actually put them back. So the iteration method, which is not nicely named, is my fault. But just to give you like an idea, so iteration has a parameter called laptops. we might want to remove it. So we can say Control R, Control V to remove parameters. So you can see we have one. Let's try to remove it. Right now we have a horizontal line, a horizontal red line, which signifies that this is removed, and then we can say OK. So right now we don't have a laptop's variable anymore. Okay, let's try to undo. Encapsulate field, Control R, Control E. I don't know if you understand encapsulation, if you know what encapsulation is. Hopefully you know, because you work in an object-oriented programming like C#. If you don't know what encapsulation is, I'll make a separate video for encapsulation, so don't worry. Right now I want to only show you what it is, how to use this specific shortcut. So let's try to create an instance field. So private int number 3. So this is an instance field, okay? Well, it's not an instance field, I'm sorry. This has to be outside of the main. I thought I was outside of the main. So Alt up arrow. It's an amazing opportunity to actually use the shortcuts. So Control up arrow, and we need this one, Shift tab, okay? So private int number equals 3. This is an instance field. I want to transform this to a property. So I want to make this instance field a property. So we can say Control R, Control E to encapsulate. And here you can have a preview. You can see a preview of what is about to happen with this particular instance field. It's going to be transformed into a property. Let's try to hit apply, so enter, and you can see I have a new line over here. And I have two lambda expressions, lambda functions. We have the get, so whenever we get the number value, we actually get it from the number, so we get 3 because right now this is 3. And also when we set it, we will set with a value, so we say something like number equals 5, and then that 5 value is going to be assigned to the number over here. But as you can see here, this is how you call it, this is faded, and it prompts us to actually remove it. We don't need it. So we can say Control dot to actually open up the light bulb, so the quick access, and we can see what we can do. So encapsulate, introduce, but I want to use auto property only, right? Can I say like this? Yes. So the last option removes the actual instance field and keeps this property as it is. By default, this number property has a backing field, an instance field is there by default. You don't need to create it, okay? So by default, you have one. And the last one, Control R to rename. And this is one of the most used refactoring shortcut. So let's try to go to laptops over here. You can see that this laptops variable is used 2 times. And maybe I want to rename it. I want to have items. If I do like this, you can see that I have 2 errors over here. So I have to go line by line and see when do I use the laptops, okay? What are the times when I use the laptops variable? You don't want to do that. Again, we want to be effective with our time. So we can say Control R, and then it prompts us to rename the laptops. So I can say items. So this time, if I hit apply, items is the items variable name is everywhere, okay? So we managed to replace all the references to that specific one. So Control R to rename. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, please click thumbs up. Also consider subscribing. Until next time, bye guys.